Hello, everyone, and welcome to Collision Repair Magazine's Industry Insider Radio, a podcast for shops, shop owners, techs, and every level of the collision repair industry. I'm your host, James Kerr. Today's episode is brought to you by Simplicity Car Care. Quality auto repair, superior value, fast car service. For more information on Simplicity, please visit their website at www.simplicitycarcare.ca. Every collision repair shop has been there. There are just too many vehicles queued up and not enough hours to repair them on a good cycle time. You feel like you're throwing money out the window when you turn a vehicle away, so what do? Today we're going to discuss those answers. Talk about how to increase the capacity of your shop and the things you don't know may be causing the backlog that's throwing money out the window. Today on Industry Insider, it's how to manage capacity in your shop, with our guest from Simplicity Car Care. Hello, Ken. I've got Ken Chung from Simplicity here. Would you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your shop experience and why you're the right person to be talking about managing capacity in a collision repair shop?
Sure. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this topic that I care a lot about. So much appreciation. Hello, everyone. So my name's Ken Chung. I am currently the Vice President of Operational Excellence and Technology at Simplicity Car Care. So what I do is I work with a team of repair and professional and appraisal professionals that support our network, support our franchisees and our shops. And the interesting thing is that I'm actually from outside of industry. I actually don't come from collision repair. I know, shocking, eh? So actually, I came actually from healthcare and retail, and the retail space. You guys might have heard of a small, tiny organization called Shoppers Drug Mart and Loblaws. Just a tiny family-owned grocery chain.
Just a mom and pop down the street.
Yeah, just a mom and pop, just trying to get by and whatnot. And essentially, it's interesting coming to Simplicity because, my role in the past has really been around operations and helping businesses kind of make the most of what they have and perform with what they have available. So how do we achieve performance? How do we achieve profitability? How do we leverage the most of our operations? And so that's what I bring to the table. That's what I do at Simplicity, really so that we can deliver more cars faster, more profitable, so that essentially everyone wins out at the end. The shops, the customers, our insurance partners, vendors, et cetera, et cetera. And so I really welcome this opportunity because I'm not going to pretend to be a collision expert. So if you're going to ask me about the latest techniques in terms of extracting a dent, I'm sorry, we're going to have crickets and silence for a while. But what I'm hoping to do is actually introduce a few perspectives as an outsider and some perspectives that come from Simplicity that I hope can really actually help the shops and help your listeners.
Well, so you seem to be pretty laser focused on managing capacity and turnaround times. And those are key aspects of running a collision repair shop today, right? So you say you're an outsider. I don't know if we can really count you as that much of an outsider, Ken. It sounds like you. Well, because the topic is so particular to the collision repair industry. It's so important to shops. And we've got such a tough nut to crack today, but we're going to do it. We're going to crack this nut today. So
absolutely.
First, let's identify the problem. How can we characterize a backlog of vehicles? What's the circumstance? Give us a broad rundown, Ken. What are we looking at?
Yeah. So I think, if we think about like the, definition of backlog, it's really that you have work or vehicles that, to be worked on, but you just can't get to it at the moment. So essentially you have an inventory of work. So what does that look like? Or what is that? Well, I mean, for a shop, that's like the cars that's in the lot. Those are your cars that's on the road that you need to be scheduled in. It's the work orders sitting on your desk. And if you're with the insurance, it's the assignments that's sitting in the system that you have to get to. So all of that is inventory of work, a backlog or stuff that you have to get to. And the reason why I'm so passionate and I care so much about capacity is that anytime you have a backlog, you run the risk of having more work that you can handle at any given time. And I remember, in terms of, one of my mentors told me, said, "Hey, Ken, you know what's the fastest way to turn a high performer into a poor performer?" I was like, "What's that?" "Start loading them up with work." And that really resonated with me. And that's why I actually care a lot about capacity. And, when we talk about, what's the problem, when I think about capacities, there's actually two sides of it. We're actually going to talk about one, but you actually have a problem when you have too much capacity. So you're burning cash, you're bearing costs, and you're not recouping it with revenue or with work. And then there's obviously the other one where you actually have too much. And the other reason why I care so much about, like, the capacity and such, is because when I think about operations in a shop, it's actually, it's like you're walking this tightrope, right? You're trying to get this balance of a proper amount of work within the shop, right? And it's not just, oh, I have so much work and that's it. I don't think about the other side. So that's why I think so much about capacity. And that's why I really appreciate the fact that we're talking about this topic today.
Okay, we're gonna focus on I've got too many cars, right? Like
Exactly.
I don't have enough cars is a whole nother topic of how to attract the cars, but we're talking. I'm
Definitely.
using cars as a short form here, but
Exactly.
we're gonna talk about too many because post pandemic, the way things have bounced back, that's more the circumstance. I think most shops in
Absolutely.
Canada are
I
looking
just
at.
want to make sure that when we talk about capacity, we recognize that there are two sides to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it must hurt, right? Having cars sitting there, knowing that you can make money on them and you just can't get to them for whatever reason. So I
Absolutely.
want to break down some of these, some of the reasons why this is happening and work through some of the solutions to that shops can actually do something about today about the shop
Mhm.
capacity. But it's worth revisiting. This is common problem. Like this is happening all over. And
Correct.
why? Why is this happening? How do shops get into the circumstance of having too many vehicles to repair?
Well, I think right now there's
I'll just
a
open
good
that
chunk.
can of worms.
Yeah.
See the worms flying everywhere.
Yeah. So I think right now there's a chunk of factors, especially in current state or today, which is driving this problem. So I think, one, we are really seeing the bounce back of COVID. And not only that, but seeing of the bounce back of not only working from home, but employers asking for employers to return to work. And so as a result, we are having more cars, on the road and such. And that scenario where there was a lack of work is no longer the case. And when I talk with some of the shops, not only have a good chunk of our shops recovered, they're actually even seeing more volume than pre-COVID.
People forget how to drive over COVID.
People forget how to drive, which is going to my second thing in terms of what's affecting capacity, is if the type of work or if the complexity increases. I can say, within simplicity, we've actually seen a higher volume of non-drives. And so the nature of the work has changed as well. So if you were thinking about a shop and we talk about vehicles in general, we don't realize, or not to say not realize, but we have to recognize that there's actually a mix of work, drivables and non-drives. And even within that, there are various complexities. And when we talk about capacity, what's the capacity for the type of mix that you have? So now we have a mix where it's now heavily more weight to the complex jobs, the non-drives. And so now we have to think about capacity given this new mix. um, Another challenge within, some of our shops, at least with simplicity, is we have some shops that are dealing with more customers, especially when we bring on a new shop. And some shops, whenever they bring on the insurance work, they don't, they assume that sometimes the work kind of trickles in, but in reality, in some cases, the floodgates open and the amount of volume of work that they receive is higher than they expect. And so the planning doesn't quite link up with that. And then obviously there's some of those challenges, as in, labor shortage, staffing, supply chain issues and whatnot. All that affects, capacity and also affects backlog. So, there's a multitude of items which are just really coming together, which is exacerbating and kind of driving this capacity challenge here.
Let's start breaking them down a little bit because there's some common
Sure.
causes that are fairly easy to recognize, and you touched on a few of them: staffing, training, shop space. But I think where we're going on this magical journey of a podcast is to try and talk about the difference you have in approaching how to run your shop when you've got all the data and when you don't. If I can anticipate a little bit, I think that's where we're going to end
Hmm.
up heading.
Sure.
And so there are common causes on the surface that are definitely factors, things like staffing, things like training, things like shop space. But I don't think they can shoulder all the blame. And how much are things like staffing, training, and shop space contributing to this backlog issue?
Um, you know what? They are actually um, significant contributors because when we talk about a backlog, it's really, how much work are you receiving and how much work that you can handle. And so when you're talking about staffing, training, and shop space, it's about how much work you can handle, right? So if you have, 10 cars coming in, within the week, but because of how many bays, how quickly, how productive you are and such, you can only get through 8 vehicles. Well, because of your supply, because of your resourcing, you can't handle that capacity, right? So like one of the things that I look at, or whenever I work, you know, with a team at Simplicity, is we spend our time with the shop saying, okay, what is the maximum potential? How much can they actually handle? And then based on that, are they actually realizing? So if we take a look at a shop and say, hey, you know what, based with this, one tech and one painter, one prepper, and whatever that we expect that they can handle, 10, 15 vehicles a week, you know, according to our model. Well, then the question is saying, okay, but how many are you actually delivering? Well, I can only get through one a day. Okay, now we have to take a look at those three pieces: staffing, training, and shop space. If any of those are barriers or restricting the capacity available to do the work.
All right, let's say I'm a shop owner and I don't want to have to care about any of this. I am sorry, I'm overworked. I've got enough to do. I'm managing people. I'm managing supply chains. I'm dealing with administrative load. It's hard to know how deep to go down the rabbit hole of gathering data that's going to yield any tangible or good result because you want your time spent with a return on investment. It can get easy to get sucked up into like, oh, well, then the average car and given this square footage and trying to do calculations, how do you know that all the information you're gathering is actually going anywhere good, is doing anything useful?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits, or one of the reasons why I enjoy kind of what I'm doing, is because my role, and especially with Simplicity, is that we partner with these shop owners so that they don't have to do the calculations and such. So it really comes down to be like, Ken, I've got, like, take a look at my lot. I've got 15 cars sitting out there, and I can't get to it. And you know what? Every day I've got 3 or 4 customers walking in, and I'm only able to get to, you know, two cars within the day. Okay, you don't need to be a mathematician to know that you have too much work. Well, then let's start talking about then we would guide a shop saying, okay, well, let's take a look at the 80-20 rule, right? Let's look at your shop, look at what you're doing, both administratively or on the floor. What's taking up the majority of your time, right? And what we will guide and what we'll do is saying, okay, well, you know, I see that you may not have someone at the front office, someone in terms of the administration and such, and I see you running back and forth from the front to the end, right? So if that's the case, how can we set up some systems? How do we set up some processes and such so that we can actually control and actually reduce some of that load, right? Because some of the things that we see, especially with the small shops when we go in, is you see like some of those owners that they're running out and they're doing like 3 or 4 jobs administratively, coordinating the shop floor and such. And in some cases, it's, trying to define what are the roles and responsibilities within the shop itself. And so that individuals can focus and they're not bearing on that, switching cost or the cost of jumping from one task to another.
I feel like we're really getting somewhere here now because I can see ringing in my ears a shop owner saying, "I just don't have time. I just don't have time to try and figure out this puzzle and to find out what's going wrong." And what you're telling me is that there are answers. You're just people are usually going too fast to try and figure it out, but there are answers, and oftentimes they're not. Yes, staffing, yes, training, yes, shop space, but those are the ones that like people complain about over coffee, right? Those are the ones that people, oh, if only I could get the right people in. But there are other factors like what you're saying, like administrative load, dealing with the
Yeah,
administrative load, trying to figure out what role people need to be in order to work through the load more efficiently, right?
yeah. And before we jump forward to administrative load, when we talk about staffing, training, shop space, I really want to emphasize on the shop space piece because part of the one of the big drivers around capacity is how well does work flow within your shop, right? And if you walk into a shop and you have parts lying around, if it's not clear in terms of where the tools are, like one of a lean concept, sorry, lean is an improvement methodology. It talked about prepare for the day, set up for the day. So you never leave your facility, never leave your shop as is. You set it up as if how you want to start the next day. If it is not organized properly, think about now you have your staff, your tech going, okay, like shuffling the desk. Okay, where's that order? Oh, I have to call someone. Oh, where's that? Where's that scan tool? Oh, you know what? I see that there's 5 cars. Can you move that car from this spot to the other spot? You're now burning up, valuable production capacity on just administration and just juggling things and trying to make things flow within the workspace. And you potentially, if your parts management, spot within the shop, like where you're storing your parts, that is, we take a look at your square footage at your floor as every square foot should be revenue generating. If it is just holding parts, if it is just like garbage or whatever, it's non-production spacing. So how do you minimize that so you can increase your capacity, right? That's a very important component. When we talk about shop space, people think about the space itself, but you have to think about how does the work perform within the space and how does it flow, right?
So can we characterize that maybe you're losing more than you think you're losing in terms of time and money with how you've got things set up?
Yeah, like I wonder how many individuals or body body shop owners and whatever start thinking of the term of the opportunity cost, right? What is the cost by me dealing with the administration? What is the cost of me searching for stuff? What is the cost of me storing this vehicle on the lot? And I'm dealing with this whenever I could be spending my time actually being more involved within the repair itself, within in terms of building up those relationships with vendors and distributors to reduce my costs and such, right? So all of that capacity that you draw from the shop is also affecting from your administration and how you manage your business and shop as a whole.
I think it's an ongoing, I say this with love, but I think it's an ongoing theme in collision repair shops to not value yourself, like especially if you're running things, to not value your time. You're busy putting out fires, and
Oh,
uh
yeah,
and so you don't accommodate for uh how much how much you get lost in the details, how much time you can spend in the details.
for sure. Absolutely. I can fully understand that. In times dealing with some of the shops ourselves, I can see like sometimes you just caught trying to get that vehicle out. Hey, you know what? I now have a vehicle that's in a storage yard. The customer is asking for it, and I'm just dealing with that. How do you have the capacity, right, in terms of making your shop run? So,
Knowing what you're missing is really tricky though, right? Like sometimes you need someone from the outside to say, "Hey, why don't you have someone hired to this position?" so that you can take that away from you if that's where the time suck is happening. It's kind of hard to make a self-assessment of what it is where you're getting eaten up, right? And I think with the through line that we're trying to present here is it's those details that are causing the end result of a backlog, because it means whatever's
Mhm.
preventing you from being able to get through what's on the floor is what's causing the backlog. So I
Right.
mean, this isn't stepping outside of our the talking points we set here, but I still think it's a
Sure.
really interesting.
Of course.
How do you come to understand your shop processes and to refine them? That doesn't seem easy.
Yes. I mean, in terms of, you know, the shop processes itself, it is overall at a high level. It's not overly complex. Sorry, it's not overly complex. You bring in the car, you have to detail. You have to, in terms of doing your repair planning, you're doing assessments, ordering your parts, and such. Right? What to make it simple, right? Because not everyone can suddenly hire a Lean Six Sigma group, black belt, hire a consultant to kind of scrutinize the process. Is just kind of listing what are the tasks that you are performing, and then recognizing in terms of what are those high return activities that I really need to systemize and have reoccurring, versus these are the outlying kind of conditions. And then rather than trying to build a process around it, is what is my contingency plan, or how do I budget or manage around those? Right. So that's the other part around when we talk about capacity. It's not only for the capacity that of the work that you're doing. What's your capacity to handle those warranty jobs, those customer complaints, the things that actually happen on the outside, or that's not the fringe, which slice away at your capacity, right? That you may not budget for, but you really do need to consider, because otherwise, there's a lot of variability within the jobs. And if you don't set up systems or processes to contain that variability, you're just going to feel like your shop and your operations is just chaotic, and you're going to have these challenges getting through the work.
Like, for instance, "Oh, Gary isn't here today, and Gary's the only one who can do that, so I guess we're out of luck."
Oh, I hear that I hear that so often. Oh, this person, they had a personal problem, so now we're not we're I don't know the insurer guidelines to do the estimation, and then they reach out to our regional performance managers for help and assistance. I think that's one of the great things in terms of what I enjoy about my role itself, is that we have this team to really support these shops when these outline conditions, and our role is to get them operational as quickly as possible, so that they don't lose the capacity, right?
Mm. Well, you get these questions, so you're probably the good person to ask here. What would you say is the key mistake that shops make that lead to capacity problems?
Oh, um, so
Even if it's unfair to put a little crown on one thing, like, let's try and
you know what?
grab one.
We've been talking about processes and systems. So this is what I'm going to say is the two key mistakes and such. So I think the first is that the shops, they don't outright set and implement systems and processes even in the first place, right? So if you think about every job that comes in, no two jobs are exactly the same, right? You have different vehicles, you have different types of accidents, collisions, and such. No two is exactly the same, and so we treat everything as unique and special. And so shops, we allow ourselves to become victims of this variability, and we don't think about saying, what, I may not have a system or a process that can reduce the variability or reduce every single issue, and it's super clean, but you know what? Let me take a look at if there's an opportunity that I can even reduce the variability by 25%, 50%, give some predictability so I can do proper scheduling, I can do proper staffing. So that's like one mistake. And then related to that is another key mistake is things happen, especially when we get busy. We allow good practices and standards falling to the side, right? We all know in terms of the dishes at the end of our day should be clean. We should have an empty sink and such. But sometimes you just have a busy day and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it there. And then next second, you know, you have a pile of dishes accumulating and you're like, how do I get through this?
I don't know what you're talking about, Ken.
Right.
I don't. I
Though
certainly don't
I
have
would
a
say
sink full of dishes right.
that's from my perspective the key mistake that we perform. And you know, like, you know, that's one of the things that we find whenever, you know, a shop asks us for help. When we go in, we realize saying, oh, you know what, you actually don't have a system or process in place, or there's a gap here. And we go in with our playbook and we help set that up and try to bring some order, remove some of the chaos, remove some of the variability. So, to your point around the data, we can understand the capacity and we can understand where capacity is being lost, right?
I just keep thinking about your example of the shop owner running back to the front of shop and then running to the back of shop and running to the front of shop. And I completely understand the mentality because I'm the same way. I'd rather just go and do it because I know I can get it done. But the time lost just going back and forth, I it starts to add up, right? So can we
Yeah.
add on to that like the ways that you don't like that is a hidden cost, really. Like the amount of
It
time that you're spending running back and forth.
Absolutely. The hidden cost, like, you know, like we're talking about your time, your effort, scheduling, communicating, you know, checking on parts. Like you take a look at like not only the owner, but you have a tech. You know, if you think about, you know, their value is whenever they're actually pulling out the dent, when they're installing and removing, and when they're spending their time trying to hunt for things, or they're cleaning up the shop and such, and they're sweeping. You're saying, well, this tech, their value is actually repairing the vehicle, not performing janitorial activities. As an owner, your job, your role is in terms of ensuring, or a GM, your role is making sure that the shop runs properly. You don't have the time to kind of figure out how, oh, you know what, I can't open up this invoice, right? And I'm dealing with the accounting and such. You know, but at the same time, you have to empathize that not all shops are in a situation where they can suddenly bring on a whole bunch of staffing, and given the labor market, that, you know, you may not be able to, you know, bring in the staff that you need. And so the part of the challenge, or part of the issue here, then, is how do you set it up? How do you set up a cadence on this administrative work or these hidden costs so that they don't blow up in your face, or they don't blow up and you're bearing higher costs, you know, on you than you should be, right? And I think, you know, one of the things that I see, or you kind of bring forward, is, you know what, I have to do it, let me take it on, right? And some of our discussions that we have with the shop is when they say, yeah, you know what, I could bring on a CSR, I could bring on a parts person, but I can't afford it. But then you're a 1 million, $2 million shop, you're growing. And then our question back is, yeah, but can you afford not to have that person?
Well, when we're talking about overcapacity, presumably there's more money to be had if we can just get better organized to do that. And I have a lot of sympathy with how tricky that is because you plan roles according to people's
100%.
capacity and according to their talents and according to their schedule. And that's not easy. Like and those solutions have got to be differ quite a bit from shop to shop and people to people. Uh,
100%.
that's
I mean,
tricky.
look, we have some shops that, you know, they are not struggling with the capacity issue, but then, you know, you have, and I'm not going to pretend that I have all the solutions. We have overcapacity challenges in some of our shops as well. But you take a look at some of the shops and you see that when you take a look at how much inventory they have, that maybe they've got about 300, $400,000 of inventory. And you think to yourself, huh, if I could just get capacity, right, to do that, you're opening up another 300, $400,000 of sales. And then when you dig into it and you find, yes, maybe it is related to tech, but it's like, you look, I don't even have the time to write the estimate. I don't even have the time to like reach the customer. It's like, okay, well, think about now administration, bringing that on. I've now expanded my administrative capacity. So now I can spend my time on the production capacity in the back end.
Can we apply the old business adage of hire for tomorrow and not hire for today?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think in terms of one of the challenges, um, and one of the things that we deal with or see some of the shops is the memory or the recency effect of like, well, what happens if we have COVID? What happens if suddenly the work doesn't come in, right? And now I'm bearing on this cost, I'm bearing on this staff and such. And so, that's part of that's part of the challenge and part of the things that we try to work with, on our shops, right? Is, how do we plan for the future? What is your business plan? And in terms of not only business plan, how much capacity, how much work do you need for your business, and how much work can your shop handle?
Tricky business. Goodness.
It is. I wish, if I had the perfect solution, if I had all the answers, I'd probably be the richest man in the world, right?
Well, we did promise some answers though, so we've got some
So
answers here. We got some
absolutely,
answers today. We talked about
absolutely,
staffing and training and shop space. We talked about
yeah.
dealing with the administrative
And
load. We talked about hidden costs.
and the one thing I also want to kind of just impress upon you when we talk about administrative load is it's changed today. In the past, way in the past, you had to just focus on, I can actually do the repair, produce it out of the shop. Now the administrative load has become much more complex. Before you even repair the job, you have, administrative staff. The shop has to touch like 7 pieces of software. You have to touch, if they're doing insurance works, the insurance, estimating system. They have to do the parts sourcing. If they're doing, rentals, they might have to go into a rental system. They have to do the collision repair management system. They have to take a look in all data, this and that, before they can even do the job. So the administrative load has definitely increased. And it's just thinking about how we become creative and what are some solutions that we can take, things that we've explored at Simplicity to be able to ease that administrative load.
So 7 pieces of software while the car owner is out front tapping their foot, impatient and annoyed because they're late for their own work. Like,
Absolutely. Right?
goodness. All right. So let's take a few steps back and talk from
Sure.
kind of a 10,000-foot view. The impact of holding on to a car too long. We tend to think of it as just, oh, that's the revenue that I haven't gotten yet, or if only I could get to it. But is there more to it than that? Is there more than just lost revenue to having cars too long?
Yeah. So, you know, having cars too long, one of the things that I talk about is this notion of carrying costs. What does it mean to have like inventory of work, right? And when we think about, the hidden costs or the cost of having this inventory, think about it. Um, you have the challenge of, I've got work, I've got vehicles, I'm trying to schedule this, I'm trying to shift it around and such, right? So you have this administrative cost of juggling the inventory you have. You have the cost of making sure that your inventory has not expired. And what I mean is in that inventory expired, let's say that you actually have cars on the road, right? But if you're over capacity, let's say you have a repair that's been on the road for 2 or 3 months, you now have the cost of, I now have to reach out to the customer, right? And confirm that they are still wanting to do the repairs, that they didn't go to another shop. You have the cost of, perhaps I procured the parts and now I'm waiting in terms of for another part to come in. I'm waiting for the vehicle to come in so I can do the repair. I'm now bearing the cost of the parts or the car sitting in my lot or in my building. So I'm burning utilities, I'm burning rent, I'm burning storage costs for that vehicle. If you think about the carrying cost, is the longer a car sits on the road, in your building, in your lot, the value of that job decreases over the time because the incidental costs and the hidden costs decrease the value. We really talk about, when you think about a job, you have the sale coming in, and we think, oh yeah, you know what, there's a labor, there's parts and materials and such, but you don't think about all those fixed costs and the overhead, which actually starts accumulating onto that. So we talk about gross profit. That's the direct cost for the job, but we don't think about the indirect cost and the potential loss of revenue that comes from having that inventory sitting either in our system, in our lot or on the road.
Sounds stressful, Ken. Sounds stressful.
I know, but it's kind of exciting actually.
Oh
It's
yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah.
Well, sorry, let me refrain. It's kind of like, you have this tough nut to crack, and whenever you actually finally crack that nut or you tear that wall down, it it feels relieving. And you know what? Whenever, some of the shops that we've helped, whenever it's I really enjoy seeing, when a shop succeeds,
It
right?
sounds like you're the right person, Ken, to be talking about managing capacity in shops then. So there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? There is a solution. Like you have taken shops that had capacity problems and unblocked whatever was blocking them from doing it, and they have achieved capacity.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. What Whenever
Let's do
there are
some success stories here. I need some hope.
yeah,
You know, we've
so
dwelled on the stressful enough.
yeah, so whenever you have over capacity, some of the responses that we see, or the responses that we have from shops, is just, okay, I need to turn off the tow ends, I need to push away the tow truck, I need to put away the vehicle. And I hate seeing that, because that is revenue or sales that you can accumulate, that you lose the business, they go at the door. And so, the thing that I focus on and what I love about being at Simplicity is, we don't want to accept that. We want to identify what are the barriers and the constraints, and then remove those barriers so that we open up capacity and bring on more vehicles. I can tell you that one franchisee, or one shop that we had at one point, was sitting on about 2 months of inventory. At that time, I think their WIP was somewhere around 170, 180,000. You know what? It was a large number, because at my age, sometimes the memory is not quite as accurate. And we start talking about, some of the solutions that we have, how we level the capacity within the shop, how we tighten up in some of our cycle time, doubling down on repair and replace, those kind of pieces. And we're actually able to bring up this six figure, around 180,000, down to about a 40,000, type of inventory. What I like to aim for is a shop, has about enough inventory that they have about between 2 weeks to a month's worth of inventory. For me, that kind of feels healthy. And if we take a look at industry standards, and I'm not talking about collision repair, but operations management standards, we like to see a facility or a shop run to 90% of their capacity. So they have this 10% of their buffer. And we like to see, in terms of the max potential, like how they can perform if they have proper staffing, if they have proper up training, get to around that 95% of max potential. That's what I try to target. And that's where I think any shop owner should be targeting. And, when we work with shops, when, Simplicity goes in, these are some of the things that we're trying to target: opening up the capacity, increase the maximum potential, and getting the most out of what you have.
So it sounds like the issues of managing capacity, it's kind of like a doctor diagnosing a patient. Like you need to find out what's going wrong and find out how to fix it. And every shop is different, but there's only so many things that can be going wrong. Is that roughly what you're saying?
Um,
Or you don't want to compare yourself to a medical doctor?
So
It's
actually, it's kind
also
of funny. So
understandable.
so so here's the thing. I actually came from the healthcare space,
Oh,
and whenever I take a look at collision, it's like my vehicle is the patient on the operating bed, and I take a look at the techs as the surgeons, and it's a team. Like the prepper is in terms of the surgical assistant and the painter. Like, when I take a look at it, I see so many of the parallels. And you can arguably say, just like every vehicle is different, well, every patient is different, every person is different. And, what I can say is, there can be multiple reasons and multiple drivers why you're losing capacity, why things are not working exactly the way that it can be. But at the same time, you can
can we
there
say
are
there
a
is a
set
cure?
number of solutions. You don't need a multitude of solutions. Sometimes you just need one or two common solutions, that addresses a majority of the issues. So it can be very complex, but it doesn't require a complex solution. That's what I'm trying to say.
So your job is ultimately solving puzzles then, is it, Ken?
Um, my job is helping the shops solve the puzzle.
Oh, careful,
So
careful
so
distinction.
so 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 th- so let me kind of frame it this way. You know, I think of myself as the coach, and I think as the shop and the shop owner as the athlete. So if we take a look at the Raptors, Nick Nurse wasn't scoring the 3 pointers. The Raptors, they won it. They're the athlete. The shop owners are the athletes. They're the winning team. I'm just the support. I'm just the guy in the back end trying to help you be successful. That's what my job is. If I try to make it as simple as possible, and that's what simplicity is doing. We are the team behind the sports team behind the shop to allow them to be successful. That's how I think of us.
A lot of good analogies going on here. So, I
Thank you.
mean, we've put forward like, you're from Simplicity, obviously. You're
Mhm.
gonna say simplicity is the answer, but can we tie this back to what is
Of
the
course.
first step do you think a shop should take to properly assess their vehicle process in order to have an accurate assessment of capacity and pace? How should a shop that is listening to this and says, I need that doctor, I need that sports coach, I need to be diagnosed, I need to find out what the blockage is. What is the first step that a shop should take?
Well, so I think the very first step is really, I mentioned this early on when we started talking about the data, is if you take a step back and you ask yourself, how many vehicles can I produce? How much sales can I produce? And then you ask the following question about how much sales and vehicles do you need to produce, right? Because that's an important question is no, not just how much do I do actually, what's my goal? What am I trying to achieve? And then you can ask yourself the question, why? What is the gap? If I'm trying to do an extra $50,000 of sales, and let's say that's another, 10, 15 vehicles, right? What is holding me back from doing that 10, 15 vehicles? And then looking across the board, actually, I kind of have to hold because I'm kind of, maybe I need to pause because I'm pulling out of the simplicity playbook. But you know what? I mean, this is how we approach it, and the what I'm is just it's taking that step back out of the day to day, the chaos, to ask that question and say, you know, based on that 80-20 rule, what's the 20% of my process or 20% of my time that I'm spending on that I can actually, if I looked at that differently, I might be able to open capacity, right?
Soul searching in collision
Soul
repair.
searching. And like I said, that's what I do. Anyone in my role does that. This is the core of what we do at Simplicity. Absolutely. This is what I would guide or tell shops, as a first step. And if they're not sure about the first step or the second step, third step, look, I enjoy this type of work. They can always reach out to me. Right.
Thank you
Well,
so much, Ken. I
for
can't
sure.
think of a better way to end on this than soul searching in collision repair. We talked a lot about managing capacity today. We did a lot of colorful analogies, and I think we've, in among a lot of discussion, I think there's a lot of really interesting action points people can take up too. So, is there anything else you'd like to say to the collision repair shops through Industry Insider as we're on our way out?
No, not just again. I really appreciate this opportunity to share perspective. To perhaps help individuals, help your listeners, and like I said, my inbox is always open. I'm always open to have a coffee, a conversation. If people need any help, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, simplicity, non-simplicity. Please give me a reach out because I'm more than happy to. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ken, for being our guest today. Ken Chung from Simplicity. What a lovely discussion. Collision repair is a fast-paced business, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. When there are more vehicles when you can handle, it should be a happy event, and let's make sure it is. By knowing your processes, being fully aware of your costs, and then you can sleep at night knowing you didn't throw money out the window by turning a vehicle away. Do you have a capacity problem? No! You're at maximum capacity, and that's exactly where you should be. Thank you to our special guest, Ken Chung from Simplicity Car Care, for helping us explore this topic. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening: Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And tune in next time for another episode of Industry Insider Radio. I'm James Kerr. Thank you for listening. Today's episode was brought to you by Simplicity Car Care, quality auto repair, superior value, fast car service. For more information on Simplicity, please visit their website at www.simplicitycarcare.ca.